So a Muse, as defined in the 4-hour work week, as I use it in a business context, is any business that provides an automated source of income or cash flow. And I think it's important for people to satisfy their financial needs before striving to address all of these other needs, because it really is a valuable, flexible currency. And ultimately the end goal is to spec out what you want to do, what you want to be, what you want to have, work backwards from a target monthly income number, design a business to support that and provide that, then minimize the number of moving pieces, automate it, and then you have, I suppose, what most people would consider complete freedom in the form of options left, right, and center. You evaluate the income you need by taking all of these various things that you would defer for retirement, defining them very clearly, whether that's, let's just take, for instance, Aston Martin DB9, ski chalet in Colorado for a few weeks of the year, et cetera, even if that seems utterly unattainable. But all the things that you would save for retirement if you had $500,000, $1 million, whatever. Then you look at how much that would actually cost, let's say, to finance on a monthly basis. So that could be through a car loan, it could be through a purchase, whatever it might be. And then you look at, let's say, the top 2 or 3 things in the to do and to have categories, and you add them up to arrive at a target monthly income. And it can be extremely inexpensive. I mean, for the cars, the trips and all of that, it very seldom costs more than 75 grand a year. Very seldom. And that is liberating when people realize that. Then the trick is working backwards with that goal in mind to find a business that provides that in the fewest numbers of hours of input as possible. You can turn many different types of products or services into muses, but some things are easier than others. Products tend to be easier than services, because services tend to have more of a manual component at some level. Secondly, and customer support issues. In terms of margin, I like to encourage people to aim for a retail-like margin, which would be an 8 to 10x markup from cost of goods. By cost of goods, I'm really just referring to the physical goods. I mean, you can look at fixed and variable costs, but there's no need to get too fancy. I mean, really it is my cost of producing 1,000 units, let's just say, on a per unit basis. But I encourage people to sacrifice margin in the beginning during testing. This is very important, so it might be something we can discuss separately, but in effect, to get a lower per unit cost, you don't want to stock up on 1,000 units of a product you've never sold before. It's a much better idea to prototype, maybe dry test, then only at that point do a small batch run of the product. Even if you're only making 2 cents a unit, as long as you're not losing money, you want to test and not end up with an entire warehouse full of product you can't move. Yeah. And I think that in the beginning it pays as long as you're not losing money, even if you're losing a small amount, to test effectively so that you know when you scale, you will have demand and be able to fill that demand effectively. A Muse and experimentation testing, whether that's defining the market, identifying the cost per acquisition potentially for a customer, product design, prototyping, all that can be done while you still have a full-time job. And I discourage people from just cutting all ties and losing full-time income to focus on a business. You don't have to make that leap. So people tend to think in terms of employed or entrepreneur, employed person, employee or entrepreneur. I think that there's a broad spectrum and you can very slowly and methodically move from one to the other. And it doesn't mean that you have to end up a full-time entrepreneur. You can still keep your job and have awesome side income. I mean, I'm not going to name names, but I'm pretty sure you and I both know a guy who, at the time at least, this was a few years ago, worked at Google and was selling millions of dollars through Shopify. And he did both very comfortably. So I don't think you have to choose necessarily between one and the other. So the internet and technology have made businesses much easier to start and run and analyze than even when I started doing things in 2001. So much easier. I mean, now you have everything from Amazon Web Services to Shopify to real-time inventory management for very low cost. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I think that there is also a deluge of tools, so that can be confusing to some entrepreneurs. They now have more options to choose from. But at its core, I think there's never been a better time to create a business that gives you income, time, and location independence, it's very exciting to see. I mean, I've never seen, in the last competition, what was it, 3,000 something businesses? I mean, no, that was not even feasible, in 2001, so it's very exciting. Yeah, so by freedom of location, and there's an order in which I recommend reaching these different points of sort of currency thresholds. So you have income first, and depending on if you're employed or self-employed, then you have location as an employee, then time. If you're self-employed, it would be time and then location. But by location independence, it just means you're not tethered to one location. So you can work as easily in San Francisco, where we are now, as you could in Canada, as you could in Buenos Aires, as you could in Tokyo, as you could in Berlin, which is exactly what I did for a year and a half while traveling around the world. That just so happened at the time, the technology kind of sucked for doing that. And I was still able to do it, but it was a pain in the ass. Whereas it's extremely easy now if you choose your tools correctly. Muses interest me for a million and one reasons, but predominantly because it's a search for elegance. And I like elegant things, whether that is Toyota lean manufacturing, where they completely reinvent the auto industry because they're very meticulous about calculating and then removing unnecessary steps, whether that is economy of motion. In this case, it's a business. So you can create something that a decade ago would have required a staff of 100 people, yet now it's run by a mother of two who works on it part-time and puts in a few hours a week. I mean, it's the most efficient and effective use of resources.